What's up, UPSIS Supervision? Glad y'all could make it again this week. I've been traveling a lot and gathered up a whole lot of content to share with y'all. So let me start this off with a really good quote I heard. Your success is in direct proportion to how much uncertainty you can deal with. I think they contributed to Tony Robbins. I don't know, I heard it from a whole different source, but it did hit home from when I'd heard it. The more risk you take and manage determine how much reward is that's at the end of the path. But controlling that risk is the key. This is all very true when you're talking about risk. It doesn't involve your safety. You know, we fail to accurately answer the question, is the risk worth the reward, when it's related to our safety. So when the stakes are as high as they are in our business, we don't want to take risk lightly, but we still do because we become normalized to it. When the management of that risk fails and someone gets hurt and we can't explain ourselves other than we thought we had it managed, because it hadn't happened to us personally yet. You know, if each one of us had to learn the hard way, then that's over 100 recordable injuries. You know, we'd be out of business at about the first 10, and we wouldn't have any respect for the hands because we'd just be hurting them and rolling them to the side. So we have to learn from each other's mistakes. So share those errors with the rest of us so we don't repeat them, because the more we talk about problems, the more they're at the forefront, and it helps us all. So there's not a single person in this company that can say that they got in trouble for reporting anything. But there are a load that, through the lack of participation or thinking they don't want to look stupid or viewed as a failure, shoot themselves in the foot. So report those incidents. So let's go over the safety reports that came in this week. So an employee on a forklift at the shop backed up into a parked UPS vehicle. All right, we've seen that 100 times before, you know, so we need to be sure anybody we have driving a forklift is certainly qualified to run it. Employee felt a strain and needed to get it checked out. It was checked out and he was fine. So please make sure you guys know muscle over machine is not always a good option, because if nothing else, it kills you in your old age when you've wore out your back instead of a forklift that you're backing into a truck somewhere. So we had a craftsman that tripped and fell over a concrete stanchion. You know, he was checked out and released, went back to work, and another guy tripped over the tongue of a trailer sticking out into the walk path. So he was checked out and released. So there again, you know, we can't take anything too lightly, because both those could have been much worse, and we are very glad that they got reported so that we know what's trending out there. So this is one that we tend to talk about a lot. We had an extended boom forklift that ran over a concrete piling in a plant on Friday. He had a spotter, and as he traveled through the unit with an air compressor on the forks, once they got out of the unit and the spotter felt like he was all in the clear, he elected to leave because he thought the hazards were gone. So now the operator couldn't see because there's a big old, like it's about like a 185 forklift on the front of his forks. Well, he hit a concrete pier sticking up. Well, it gutted the forklift, or it gutted the air compressor, knocked it off the forks and diesel and oil and everything all over the road, you know, and it badly damaged the concrete piling too, because it was right at the elevation of the outrigger on that forklift. So we tend to learn that lesson with these extended boom forklifts all the time. So let's try this. Let's all say this together. Everybody raise your right hands. Let's try this one time and just see if it does any good. Come on now. I will not rent an extended boom forklift for general purposes working in a unit. If a vendor sends one, I will ask him to send me a straight mast instead. Let's see what happens there. You know, we learn this lesson all the time, so I may want to try to go over the top to try to fix it, but I almost feel like we need to have specially qualified operators if we do have an extended boom forklift, and nothing else, because anybody with a hunting license that's running them is not a good plan. Oddly enough, right before we came in here to record this, I heard that we had an incident on a project where a plant guy running an extended boom forklift hit a van that we had rented. So even the clients can't control their extended boom forklifts. So another incident, employees working on rolling the crank on a compressor to check the web deflection using a ratchet strap. The ratchet strap slipped from the shaft, causing the handle to come back and contact the employee's left hand. No injury or damage. So it was reported, very good for that, but it does show that even the things we do quite often have a hazard that we haven't pointed out, or it becomes very obvious when it happens. So be sure that we're getting good PHAs on there, because I have no doubt that that should have been captured on a PHA. So personal illnesses. After completion of his shift in a unit, employee is complaining about dizziness and shortness of breath. The next morning, the UPS safety representative contacted the employee and escorted him to a clinic, and he got evaluated for high blood pressure. So there again, we're wanting to take care of all of our guys. Even though it's a personal injury or a personal health problem, our safety guys can help take care of them. Most of these guys are from out of town, and get them to the doctor when they need it. So UPS was tasked with cleanup throughout the unit. While collecting trash on an elevated structure, the EE was struck in the lower right side of his back with a 7/8 stud. He stated that he was in a bent over position when the object fell from an overhead area he was working under. After being struck, the work was stopped. UPS safety and supervision were notified, and they did a cleanup, and they gave the guy some over-the-counter medication to reduce the pain and inflammation. He went back to work and everything was fine. So there again, housekeeping, always very vital. It's what they were trying to do, but maybe they should have started at the top and worked their way down. But an employee was using an engine lathe to clean and polish rocker arm parts. As the employee cleaned the part spinning in the lathe, his left index finger came in contact with a rotating chuck. So the incident is recorded as a first aid. He was standing behind his helper when the helper was drilling a hole in a piece of half-inch plate when foreign debris got in his eye. So went to the doctor and got his eye washed out, and he was good to go. Another one, the employee reported to work on 8/23 that he had been experiencing discomfort in his knee since 8/19, and it was gradually getting worse. He had reported that he had a previous knee injury in the past, so he was just wanting to go to the doctor and get it checked out, which brings up a whole another thing that I wanted to talk about on this. Was we need to watch for this type of thing out on the job. If an employee has a pre-existing injury and once he's on the job he claims he has hurt himself on the job, it gets pretty ugly. First and foremost, we're going to take care of our people, but there are some out there that will report an injury that's totally not job related. So if you have a guy out there that's limping around or walking like his back is killing him, or looks like he's nursing some injury, then let's get up with him and find out what we need to do to help him out so that it doesn't escalate from there. We certainly want to take care of the guy, but we don't want to have to pay for his knee surgery that he did while he was playing football with his kids at the house. So get to know your people. So quality. So UPS received 2 shipments from Hudson Coker fin fan shafts. The last shipment had 19 pieces that were not in spec, and today they received another 2 boxes containing 32 shafts that were not in spec. So the shop had to remachine them. So you think, why would we write an NCR on that when it was a vendor came in? Well, when our client asked us to receive material and check it out, and they expect us to quality check that vendor. So kudos to the guys that actually did their due diligence when receiving material from a third-party client. So equipment number N1 blah 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 compressor. We removed the half moon dollar plates for inspection after verbally being given additional work scope to open equipment. So during the reinstallation of the plates, the designated client inspector verbally gave our craftsman a torque value of 400 pounds for the threaded studs. We did not receive any flange torque sheets, as is the procedure for this facility. We proceeded to torque out the half moon plates without the documentation and snapped one stud and stripped 4 additional studs. QC was not notified of any torquing activities being performed on this equipment, or that we had not received torque paperwork. So I know all of us jump up there and want to help our clients when they say, hey, can you help me out with this real quick? We jump in there and react and do it before the paperwork gets there. So fortunately, in this incident, the client didn't throw us under the bus for it. They took ownership of their piece of it, but we should be better than our clients. We should request that information and make sure we get it in writing, because 400 pounds on the stud was way too much. This one is another one we wanted to highlight. UPS was to paint Unit 307 in accordance with the client specification, which requires, among other things, specific reporting and documentation pertaining to the surface prep, application conditions, and application of the paint system being used. This documentation is important to prove each layer of coating was applied in accordance with the client's manufacturer specs and all the applicable conditions. Oh, guess what? We didn't do all of the paperwork part. So we couldn't produce the paperwork, so the client said, well, sandblast it all off, let's start again. So you think you're doing a great job and you think that paint's not important? Well, we've all learned many times paint's very important, especially when you're talking to the paint inspector. So let's see, this week in the field. So I went to FHR Longview and visited the team there. Max is doing a really great job. He's telling me he's learning a whole lot of different stuff than what he had been when he's been in planning and inspection. But he did tell me he learned one great big lesson last week, and that was not to reply to all when I asked for something. He said he got about 32 emails of being called all kinds of suck-ass names. So he learned that pretty good. But I felt like replying myself, but I didn't want to ag it on. So he learned to reply to all a lesson, but Max is doing a great job there. So talking to Max, it was apparent that he's really taking advantage of the leadership training that we've been focused on the last couple of years. You know, the FHR night shift manager shared a story with me about Max was getting pressure from some high up folks in the plant with how our entry attendants were doing their job. In that plant, the entry attendants were supposed to see the confined space training on their safety council card before they let anybody in the hole. So the entry attendant shut down the other contractors and the inspectors from entering because they didn't have the training on their card, but was letting our guys in. So they told Max, hey, if she's not going to cooperate, then let her go. And so he had to explain to them that, you know, you're really opening up a slippery slope here, you know, bending the rules, but you know, if you want to do that, we'll let her go and you can bring somebody else in to do it. So first the guy said, well, then pull them off and I'll get somebody else to take your place. It's all right. So Max said he was very diplomatic, said that's fine, not a problem, no argument or fight for me. So then shortly later the guy came back and said, well, you know what, never mind, you're right, we need to get the other people trained and they need to follow the rules. So bam, there you are. You know, always a good way to give diplomatic pushback, save the client from their own mistakes, and keep from dragging us into a hole. So, very good for Max there. You know, it really shows that he's stepping up to the plate and really leading his team there and leading the client too. So, I went to Lake Charles and visited a job with our old buddy Roscoe. You know, we had to go to a big Goober Smooch meeting at Citgo, try to get some more work out of those people. And so Roscoe and I have been working together for probably the last 35 years. So I asked Roscoe, give me a story, you know, of something you did you'll always remember, or something you're not going to repeat. So he's telling me he was working on a crew that had a PM that had all of his family working there. This was way back at his Brand X days, because we all know we don't do that here. So the project manager's brother was a night shift supervisor, and he had no clue what he was doing. But Roscoe didn't really want to push back too much because, he didn't want to fight the blood connection there. So he lined the brother up on the night shift to cut off the 180s off the back of the convection box, and actually put his hand on them and showed him which ones, and he went home. So he came back the next morning, and the brother was all big-eyed and said, "Oh man, I think I really messed up, because I cut a row off below the line where we were supposed to. And to make it even worse, I've lost all 12 of those 5 chrome 180s. I don't even know where they're at." So, not only did he cut them off, but losing the fittings to weld them back on, damn it. So now Roscoe was faced with having to tell the client what went on and tell that PM what went on. So at first he was trying to just take the blame himself rather than throw the guy under the bus and make it look like he was blame shifting. But project manager stepped up and said, "Nah, I know that you lined him up right. I was over there when you did it." So Roscoe spent the rest of the day dumpster diving and taking ass eatings. And from that point forward, he said, goes up on the back of a box with a can of spray paint, and he sprays every one that needs to be demoed so that there's no confusion. Been there, done that. It's a common problem on the back of a convection box. But so let's get into some more of the lessons that everybody shared. So Ben Howard had a pretty good one. It's a little bit long, but I couldn't pare it down too much. So he learned a lesson about 15 years ago. It was his first standalone project as a project manager. He's working at a paper mill in Arkansas, applying weld overlay to 4 big digesters in a paper mill. The job was really running smooth. He worked the first 2 digesters without any issues. Came in, broke them down, washed them out, stepped up the autos. They were Cadillacing. So he finished the second digester, moved to the third, and they were halfway home when they made entry to the third. There was a massive bulge about halfway down on some old overlay that had gotten so hot that it separated from the base material. So the mill manager and the inspection and everybody met, and they found a path forward. So they decided that they were going to gouge it all off and weld back up the repair area. So he had a plan in place. They were ready to knock it out, and he formatted a change order form, printed it out, and took it to the maintenance manager. He met with him and asked the guy the guy asked him to hold off on that change order until we finished the repair and we knew what the total cost was going to be. This way we could do it all at once. And it made sense to him at the time. He said they finished the repair, completed the scope, moved on to the next digester. He took the finalized change order to the maintenance manager again and asked for his signature. Again, the guy told him, "Hey, we're good, hold off till we get the last one done, we'll do it all at the same time." So he never actually showed the guy the change order. He had it in his hand, but he never actually had him read it. But he said, "Hell, he's a good enough guy, it makes sense to me after all. We haven't had any issues signing anything yet," so he figured it'd be fine going on with the rest of the repairs. So you all know how this is going to end, right? So opened up number 4. Same thing, much more additional scope. So same thing again. They go through all of it, get to the end, and the final FCO turned out to be for $620,000 on what was originally supposed to be around a $400,000 project. So he walked in the guy's office, handed him the change order, and his face turned beet red. He was extremely unhappy, to say the least, with the cost and refused to sign it. So he says, "What I learned was a very valuable lesson. It was that it wasn't that he couldn't trust the maintenance manager or the contracts people in the industry. It was that he had failed to communicate appropriately. He had never even glanced at the cost of the change orders when he printed them out, when he took them to him for signature. He said, I didn't follow up with an email advising him what the cost was, and that he didn't communicate the increase as I discovered an additional scope. During one of the meetings, a plant guy said something to him that stuck with him ever since, and this totally makes sense. He said it's a lot easier to accept $25,000 per day for 10 days straight than it is to accept $250,000 on day 10. So, simple email saying, hey John, I know that per our conversation, we're waiting to finalize this change order, but this is what it's costing so far. Would have saved him lots of time and money. So I think we've all learned that lesson several times, and it's come back on us pretty hard a few times. And that's something we don't need to keep learning over and over, because that does not only cost us money, but it costs us relationship with the clients. Justin Taylor had some pretty good ones. I like how this one starts off. Don't hire a husband and wife team together. They had an HR incident that occurred on the job that was between one of his general foremen and his wife on an opposite shift, and it all spurred from jealousy issues. It took a lot of focus off the job, having to manage all of that instead of the focus he needed to spend in the field. So lesson number 2 that he just learned was quality packages being sold off as they're completed. He said he knew this, but a lot that added up to this was recognizing it too late that we didn't have enough inspectors. And the ones that we did have were, a couple were a little bit inadequate. He said, I've since talked with the leads from the job and made them aware to let me know as soon as they start recognizing there's an issue, so we can get the ball rolling, get additional resources or replacements there sooner rather than later. I think we've all learned that too a bunch of times. Pre-turnaround scope was not completed and winded up being moved into the execution window. So factors leading up to this were I wasn't up on the schedule updates of the pre-turnaround activities. I was relying on my superintendents to ensure the scope was being done while I focused on getting a plan together on the influx of people that was coming in on site. So the corrective actions were he's implemented are making sure that my supervision are in a default aggressive mindset on our pre-turnaround activities. You know, they need to knock out everything before the turnaround starts. But part of this stemmed from they weren't getting all the material they needed, and they were struggling with trying to get all the drawings finalized. So it wasn't that they weren't keeping up with it. They were lacking all the resources they need to do that, but we didn't communicate that to the client as well as we should have. So here I got another one from Mark, the head QC that was out there on that job from Exxon, and it pretty much mirrors a lot of what he had said. Working the last Exxon job at Joliet, I had an employee or two that weren't doing their part for the team. Everyone knew it, including myself. In my mind, it was easier to keep them and have them contribute what little they could to help the team out rather than to let them go and my team having to take on that much more work. And it didn't even help that we were in an alky. So I knew it would have been harder to get a suitable replacement. So I think we've all been in that predicament where you say, well, I'm just going to slug it out with these guys here instead of cutting them loose. But you have to remember, when we allow somebody to perform at this level and the rest of us are here, it tends to drag the rest of the team out to a balance. So we have somebody that's not performing all the way, then we need to go ahead and cut them loose and find new ones rather than let them drag us down, because they will define us in the end. So this one, at first Willie said, man, I hate to really even talk about this one. But he shared it with me anyway. He told me, go ahead, you could pin it to me, because there's a lot of people probably already know this story about Willie, but Willie's not unique in this story, because every damn one of us watching this have done this same thing and just hadn't got caught. Either that or you're a liar. Back before UPS, I found myself working for a mediocre company and was unhappy to say the least. I was on a job in Tulsa, was working night shift in the cold, and everything lined up for a shitty job. So we had a small exchanger crew working through some small exchangers, and I just wanted to get off the job and go home for Thanksgiving. We had sold the shell test and proceeded to do the tube side, but it was showing a leak one of the guys made a comment, we should just cheat and get this done so we can all go warm up. I told the crew, go ahead and fill the shell side back up. Let the pressure equalize, and we did just that. We worked a plan and had it all ready to sign off on the hydro sheet. Operations came by to buy the hydro, and it was all but signed off when he decided to make sure that the shell side was drained because of the cold. When he opened up the bleeder, the pressure dropped, and I knew we were screwed. Of course, they called all the head cheeses, and I had to own the situation for having the crew do what they did, and I was fired for the first time in my career. I'd made a terrible call, and I paid the price for the shortcut. With that door closing, another door opened, and that's when he got the call from us. So he had hoped to never tell that story again, but he felt like it was a pretty valuable lesson in his life. So, got to appreciate him for sharing that, because we've all done something out there that was on the edge of sketchy. Had we been called out on it, it would have been pretty bad. But you say, as one door closes, another one opens. So never make a snap decision that puts your integrity at risk. It's very easy to do when you get into those circumstances, but it never pays off in the end. It's very tempting sometimes, I know. But so I got a really great one from Santos Trevino, one of the first tower guys to ever give me some good feedback, because those guys usually just try to operate in the background. So Dwayne's got him trained not to ever talk to anybody but Dwayne, I guess. So Santos said, back in the spring of 2015, we showed up at BP Cherry Point to demonstrate to the client on how well we're going to be handling and installing the new designed Shell Global trays for their reactors. All this work involved handling and installing beams well over 3,000 pounds and tray pieces that weighed over 200 pounds. All this to be installed in a confined space. The mock-up that was presented by us inside a fab tent went well. All the work was witnessed by the client and the manufacturer. Everything was perfect, and from everything we knew, we didn't do all of our due diligence. 3/4 of the ways into the turnaround and installation, a tray piece 200 pounds plus fell on an employee's foot and resulted in a broken foot. Was a recordable. Employees were rescued from the confined space and lowered to grade by rope pulleys. All I could think of while the rescue was going on was how miserably I'd failed my own team. I took ownership of that accident. Someone had exited the gate hurt. The tray piece fell off the tray ring that could have been prevented by modifying the piece and adding an eye bolt to secure it better. Planning was the issue here. During the mock-up, we failed to recognize the hazard our employees were being introduced to. So ever since, on pre-turnaround phases, planning the work with a safety mindset is a must for me. This accident happened back in 2015, has been haunting me ever since. Having someone get hurt on one of my projects is something you don't want on your shoulders ever. So the client was happy with the execution part. We finished the turnaround way sooner than the previous contractor, but he wasn't happy because he didn't feel like it was a success because he got somebody hurt. But all in all, I learned that wasn't the right move. Oh, that's something else. I even messed up my own stuff. I even typed this, can't even read it. So, Mitch Alexander, he had a couple of good ones. So I picked this one out. This happened, I think he told me 20 years ago. So something Mitch is still very aware of. This is the exact sort of thing I wanted to go. All my tools demoed 200 foot of 2-inch acid line in full PPE. Not a drop of acid came out of the pipe. All the pipe was on the ground, was too long for the metal dumpster. So what did I do? I took off all of my PPE because it was summertime, it was hot. So we started cutting the pipe in half so it would fit in the dumpster. As soon as the portaband blade broke through the ID of the pipe, acid sprayed all over my chest. Apparently the line was plugged on both ends and had built up some pressure. He was able to get to the safety shower, get his coveralls off without getting burned, but the top half of his coveralls were completely gone. So lesson learned were never assume a line is depressured, even if it has both ends open. One last mention before we get away from here. we got a guy that's been working with us for a long time that's out at Shell Deer Park right now. It's Gilbert Ramos. He's been a fitter, a foreman. He's general foreman out there now. He's been out there at Shell helping Billy Ray run all that work on the non-routine side and the furnace rebuilds and all the work that we pick up outside of turnarounds. So Gabriel's always got a great attitude, and he's got a get-her-done type personality. He's very self-conscious about his craftsmanship. So people like him continue to make us all look good as a company, and we're going to keep loading more responsibility on him. And he's one hell of a craftsman. We hate to lose him out of the game, but you know, he's doing a great job out there in a supervisor's role. So we want to keep developing him up. So just wanted to acknowledge his hard work and his dedication to the company. He's done us a great job. So I know Billy Ray appreciates all of his efforts out there, but he can't say it because Billy Ray's probably running in a circle somewhere looking at cow pictures while Gabriel's carrying him. Hey, I appreciate everybody's hard work. Y'all continue on. Don't rent extended boom forklift, and watch out when you're backing up. Thank you. Have a good week. Later.